Beaming across the counties of Essequibo, Demerara, and Berbice, this is Kaieteur Radio, 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio, the radio with a difference. Stay in the know. Understand what is happening in and around your country. Connect with the political actors of Guyana and hear what they have to say regarding the affairs of this country and its people. Tune in to the political show on Kaieteur Radio 99.1, 99.5 FM this and every Wednesday from 19:30. We will bring you information you need to know directly from the source. The Political Show on Kaieteur Radio 99.1, 99.5 FM and online at kaieteurnewsonline.com. The Political Show every Wednesday at 19:30 on Kaieteur Radio. Kaieteur Radio, the radio with a difference.
Good afternoon. My name is Leonard Gildarie and I'm the host of The Political Show. This is a special edition of The Political Show. And today we come in to you live across the coastlands and on Facebook and on our website, Kaieteur Radio. It is a very, tense moment in which within hours, a couple of days, 4 days, we are winding down to our most important elections. Some would say it's the most critical, it's the most important elections in all of Guyana's history. The government that goes in will have control for the next 5 years in our emerging oil and gas sector, billions of dollars added to our economy, which traditionally depended on the agriculture, forestry, and mining. The elections will also tell stories about the credibility of the parties that are participating. For the People's Progressive Party, it will be the ultimate test of whether the party has weathered the storm of 2011 and 2015. For the coalition, losing after one term will speak volumes. And so we go on and on. Today we have with us two very important persons within the People's Progressive Party. One of them is the presidential candidate, Dr. Irfaan Ali, and his Prime Ministerial candidate, Brigadier, retired Mark Phillips. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Len. It's always a privilege to be here.
It's very hot out there. I think I was just coming in and sweating, and I know that it is very hot out there too on the campaign trail. 4 days to go. Mr. Irfaan Ali, just straight into it, do you believe that your party has what it takes to win the majority, more than 50% of the votes? And why are you so confident?
With the greatest of humility, I strongly believe that the People's Progressive Party Civic will be the next government. We have the support out there. We have seen the love, the support from all cross-sections of the Guyanese population moving towards the People's Progressive Party Civic. We've also seen the momentum in the campaign for the People's Progressive Party Civic getting better increasingly. Now, we are in a better position in these campaigns because of a number of reasons. First of all, you had a government that has failed in the delivery of its own manifesto after 2015. You had a situation where the promises they would have made were not kept. 30,000 job loss in our economy. We have the productive sector that are all on decline. Gold, 60% of the dredges that were operating in 2015 are no longer operating today. the forestry sector. More than 10,000 people directly and indirectly would have lost their jobs in that sector. Rice is the same thing. The farmers are suffering. Sugar is the same thing. So the productive sector, bauxite, as you know, is going through a crisis too. And in addition to that, the government has resorted in a philosophy of taxing the nation, reducing disposable income, reducing the ability of our citizens to participate in the economy. And whilst all of this is going on, $91 billion more in taxes, we have seen welfare taken away from our people. The $10,000 Because We Care grant is just but one example. And in addition to all of this, the People's Progressive Party Civic embarked on a campaign in these elections that was very positive. One, that we focus on issues and not personality. We focus on the issues at hand. We focus on the plans and the programs in taking our country forward. We have outlined very clearly a strategy for the creation of jobs, the empowerment of people, for good governance, for the expansion of our economy, for the management of the oil and gas sector, for the investment in the other segments of the economy that will lead to a diversified portfolio of economic growth and progress. We have outlined a strategy for young people, for children, for the elderly, for the vulnerable in our society, for women, for farmers. And we have stuck to a very positive message in relation to demonstrating to the Guyanese population that we have a strategy and a plan that has great clarity in taking our country forward, as against a campaign led by the government that has been very negative, a campaign that has not spoken to their own manifesto, has not given account for their years in government. It has not given an account for their years in government, for their performance in government, for the broken promises, but one that has really been personality-driven, one that has been nasty in many regards. And personally, I'm not the type of person that wishes to engage in such a campaign. I think we have to deal with the issue. We have to be respectful to the Guyanese population in understanding that they want to see political party and a strategy that speak to their needs, their welfare, the well-being of every single Guyanese. And our platform has been one that is a unifying platform, one that seeks to bring our country together in a stronger way. And if you look at our list of candidates, you will see a reflection of Guyana. You will see a reflection in the real problems that our country face, in the policy framework and manifesto, the outline of the manifesto. So for these reasons and many more lies our confidence in winning these elections and winning it for all the people of our country. At the end of the day, it is not about the PPP Civic winning. It is about all the people of our country winning. We must all feel as if we are winners at the end of the day because we have a government that is going to work in the interest of all of us and create opportunities for all of us.
I do thank you for that, Mr. Ali. Brigadier, it's a feeling that the prime ministerial position has always been a figurehead, no real power. As a former army chief who one would want to believe is willing to change that status quo, what role do you see yourself playing?
Oh, thank you, Len, for having me on the show today. I know the reason for that, that perception, and perhaps it's based on how the office of the Prime Minister was utilized over the last 5 years. Indeed, it was a figurehead then. But as the likely incoming Prime Minister, once we win the upcoming election, I see myself having a major role to play in the administration, the new administration. I see myself having a ministerial appointment in addition to being Prime Minister and having the responsibility of marshalling the other leaders in the new administration in implementing in a timely manner all the policies and plans in our manifesto. So you will have a Prime Minister in me who will be very active, who will be very connected to the people of Guyana and working every day. Not a figurehead, not a Prime Minister only for ceremonial purposes of cutting ribbons and kissing babies.
Well, you know, just to add to Brigadier Phillips, you know, we have approached this election as a very strong team. We have presented a team, and that is Team Guyana. And this team has the responsibility of implementing the plans and programs that is in our manifesto, and you will see our leaders ensuring that that manifesto is implemented.
I want to ask you, Dr. Ali, assuming that your party wins, you're going to hold the most powerful position in this country. What plans do you have to deal with the issue of cohesion, bringing our people together?
To begin with, Leonard, I see this as a position of great responsibility. You describe it as the most powerful position. I would want to describe it as a position of great responsibility, of great honor, and I have a duty to ensure that I exercise that responsibility in a way that will be just, in a way that will ensure all Guyanese are treated equally, in a way that will ensure that all our people come together, in a way that the development aspirations of our people are realized through support of government, in a way in which the government must build an investment infrastructure, a social infrastructure, an economic infrastructure that takes into consideration all cross-section of the Guyanese population and every stakeholders so that we can have a strong economy. The issue of cohesion and bringing our people together is a very important issue. If you look at the campaign itself, one will say, after such a hard campaign, how do you do this? Well, you have to do this through your plans and your programs and policies. The plans and program must not be defined only for one group, or it must not be designed only for the benefit of your supporters. And you see what took place when one minister in this government outlined that her strategies for friends and family and supporters. That cannot be the way we achieve social cohesion. We have to invest in all our people equally. We have to bridge the gap of inequality. We have to look for the vulnerable section of our society, and we have to invest in that section of the society more so that they'll be more integrated into the future of our country. They'll be more integrated into what our country has to deliver. At the end of the day, everybody has to feel as if they are part of this development, as if they're part of this future. And that is what the resources must allow us to do. That is why our focus cannot be on only one sector. We have to use the possibility of greater earnings in the oil and gas sector to support other segments of the economy, whether it's the farming, bauxite, mining, forestry, so that these are the sectors that represent the geographic and demographic mix of our country. And we have to be able to support this. We also have to develop and design an education system that does not only look at the formal structure of education, but we have to build technical capacity. We have to build technical education, and ensure that in building technical education and enhancing technical education, it is linked to job creation, it is linked to enterprise development. So when we train young people, we give them an opportunity to be placed in a job, or we give them an opportunity to start up their own operations, whether you give them small grant and startup capital and support them with the tools and equipment of their trade. There are other aspects of governance and government that are important too, in ensuring there is social justice and ensuring that we build trust. We have to be able to build trust. We have to demonstrate by our action that we can build trust among our citizens, build trust between the citizens and the government. That is why our housing program, these social programs like housing, health, education, these are programs, sports and recreation too. These are programs that must be used in a way to reach every single citizen, to ensure that no child is left out of an educational opportunity because they cannot afford that educational opportunity, or because they don't have the uniform or the food. So let us take, for example, how we'll address it through education. We have outlined in our manifesto that we want every single child to have access to university education. To do this, we have to invest in distance and online education through an ICT platform, so that we'll take education to every single home. We said the same thing for the Technical Institute. In supporting the new sectors that are coming, especially in the services sector, you'll have at least four new hotels. The entertainment sector is going to grow. The tourism sector is going to grow. So we're talking about the building of an International Institute of Hospitality Management to start training our young people, and then the creation of new opportunities in the downstream industry, for example, of oil and gas. What are those opportunities going to be? Where the opportunities will be? What are the gaps, and how do we ensure our children and our people are trained to fill that gap. And then with the expansion of ICT, the opening up of new opportunities in call centers and so on, you can have housewives being trained to work in call centers now, all adding to disposable income, all adding to the income of the family, and that also help in bridging that inequality gap and having greater participation by all stakeholders in the economy.
Thank you. Brigadier, you come from a background of security, and also you have some expertise in management, managing an army. How do you intend to address or lobby for the addressing of the rise of youngsters, teenagers into gangs, and the issue of migration, our border security?
Well, there are two aspects,
yes, sir,
to your question. First of all, our analyses will lead to bridging the gaps as it exists in the Guyana Police Force in terms of doing their work, as it exists in the Guyana Defense Force, the capability gaps. So we need to work on improving the operational readiness and intelligence gathering capability, investigative capability of the police force. We need to also do a similar analysis and address the gaps, capability gaps of the Guyana Defense Force. And of course, fund not only the training, but the re-equipment, the re-equipping of those two agencies, the whole professional outlook and professionalization of the agencies we have to look at too. And another aspect of crime, perhaps the soft aspect, is that we have to approach this in a holistic manner. You heard the presidential candidate talk about youth education and job creation. Youth education and job creation is very important in crime fighting. So we have to have a holistic approach that will focus on improving the law enforcement agencies, but at the same time with getting our youths better educated and getting them to work.
Mr. Ali, going forward, this is an issue that has been plaguing yourself as well as the party. 19 charges and the questions of your qualifications. We see it daily on the social media. Are these dead issues or an attempt by the coalition to dent your credibility?
Well, for me, Mr. Gildarie, these issues never existed. And what we have seen now is the motive behind the issue. You have seen that this was created, these were issues created to help the coalition in designing a campaign. So the motive now is exposed. It is a nasty motive. It was designed, these politically motivated charges and other accusations, they were designed to come out here, to be used in political ads, to be used to compare and to paint the presidential candidate of the PPP in a negative way. This is part of the negative campaigning. But let me tell you this, it is not being gaining traction because people are seeing through it now. And people are understanding, especially with their ads and their fake news, the level of their fake news and depth that they're going to push these fake news out shows their own desperation and shows how desperate they have become as a result of their campaign not gaining traction, as a result of people understanding what is required in the future and their own actions being exposed by the Auditor General himself in the Auditor General report, by not following the Constitution, by not following the rule of law. So those issues, the negative campaigning, the motive has now been clearly understood, and we can see who the authors behind this. I have said from the inception that those charges were politically driven, politically motivated, and they're in the proper place now. They're in the judiciary, and then I have outlined right on your program, Mr. Gildarie. My qualifications are holistic in nature. I have qualifications in project management, business management, manpower planning, finance, urban and regional planning, and so these were never issues for me. But I'm happy that the motive behind the design of these issues is exposed now.
Brigadier Phillips, on the issue of the prison and judiciary, from time to time you would receive complaints that, we hearing cases taking too long to come up or too long to be completed. Then on the prison side, there's also where people are being sentenced. We look at the marijuana issue and other. There seems to be an uneven playing field there. Could you say if you would be using your experience in the issue of security to maybe push for reforms in these areas?
Well, certainly we will push for reforms, but of course we will adopt an informed or studied approach to all these issues. With regards to marijuana, there's a lot of information out there. There's a trend towards not only sentence reduction, but also limited amount of marijuana being allowed to be in possession of individuals. So we will have consultancy with all the agencies, all the stakeholders, and with the necessary legal advice. We see ourselves coming up with a series of legal reform to deal with the issue pertaining to marijuana, to the use of marijuana. With regards to the prison issue, in a modern society, the move is towards prison reform and rehabilitation of prisoners. And we will certainly be supporting those measures, because what we don't want is, after periods of incarceration, prisoners just keep returning to prisons. We want to see prisoners having some form of education or some form of trade while they're incarcerated, and therefore can become better citizens after the period of incarceration, and therefore reduce the prison population in Guyana. So again, a holistic approach to the issues pertaining to the prison and prison reform, and also stakeholders approach and an informed approach to the issue pertaining to the marijuana and marijuana possession. With regards to the judiciary, you did mention about the judiciary. Of course, we support the independence of the judiciary. As you know, we have three arms of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And we believe the more independent our judiciary is the better functioning it will be. These are constitutional bodies, and our government will ensure that they are properly funded, adequately funded, and adequately supported, and we respect at all times their independence.
I do thank you for that. Dr. Ali, we see from time to time concerns being raised by the local private sector with regards to benefits for them. What do you have planned in terms of evening the playing field when it comes to what we receive in here and what foreign investors are getting? They're complaining that we could do the same thing if we get the same kind of treatment.
Well, we have to, Leonard, understand the context of this issue. When we were in government, we had a clearly defined investment guide, and a clearly defined guide as to what benefits are there for every sector. It was not something that was administered by an individual and based on discretion. So first of all, you have to take away the discretion from officials. When there is discretion, then someone can decide what incentives you get, or what incentive Mr. X get or Y get. We have to have a clearly defined investment guide for every single sector, and that is what you'll see. That has clarity. That if you're investing in the agricultural sector, these are the incentives that are there for investors in the agricultural sector. The same thing for mining, the same every single sector, forestry, so that it is rule driven and it is not individual driven. Once we understand that these things has to be policy driven, then you will take away what is sometimes viewed as discriminatory treatment or preferential treatment. And we had started that by removing the powers from the minister and putting that powers in the Guyana Revenue Authority. But in this government, we have seen the return of the ministerial power in all these aspects of governance. So we believe strongly that the private sector must be supported. This private sector must be enabled in achieving a higher degree of profits and achieving social responsibility too, as an important part of what the private sector do, and also in the promotion and generation of new jobs. And we have outlined a clear strategy to return a number to return different sectors to viability. For example, our miners. We have said that we're going to return their tax incentives on machinery and equipment. We are going to give them, we're going to support them in terms of technology. We're going to support them with training and development. We're going to support them in recapitalizing so that they can get back there. We'll have a fair and more transparent way in the allocation of mining concessions and land so that this industry can pick up back, so that the industry can regain its strength and be part of that well-diversified economic base. We have spoken about the bringing back the sugar industry, creating those jobs, and of course there'll be a lot of incentives for value added when it comes to the sugar industry itself and the potential of the sugar industry. We'll also have a new regime of investment opportunity and incentives in new areas. When you look at the downstream industry for oil and gas, whether it's agrochemical, fertilizer, you have to have special development areas also. Some regions you have to give incentives to motivate investment there. When we were in government, we had a special legislation that gives special incentives for investment in Region 10. So we are looking at Region 6, for example, as a major player in the with the deepwater harbor, logistics business, brokerage, financial sector. It will give rise to its own services industry and industrial development there. The same, we're looking at industrial development, waterfront development, manufacturing in Linden on the Linden-Soestdijk Highway, the opportunities that will be created with a new superhighway from Timeri going all the way on the east coast, the bridging of the Quarantine River, the deep water port linked to northern Brazil. These are all things that are going to be the transformational project. The reduction of cost of electricity with a 400 megawatt, with new 400 megawatts of new power added to the grid, and looking at reducing the cost of electricity by at least 70%, with Amalis Falls coming in also. So these are the things that are transformational in nature and will support the growth and development of the private sector. It is not only incentives and tax incentives for the private sector that is critical. It is the government creating an enabling environment. It is the government investing in the right core set of infrastructure that will stimulate growth, that would help growth. So that is why in our manifesto you see us talking about setting aside $2 billion annually for hinterland roads and hinterland infrastructure at a minimum, because it is important for the investors, for the miners, for the foresters, and the community themselves in reducing the cost of operation and reducing cost of living at the same time. So the government must be able to support the investment in an enabling environment to create wealth, create jobs, and to grow the private sector. And that is what you will see. Sometimes we get carried away that the private sector might only be looking at tax incentive. That is one aspect of development. But you have the issue of the enabling infrastructure, ensuring that you have the transformational projects are linked to economic opportunities. And of course, we also have to ensure that the private sector has an equal opportunity in the oil and gas sector. You have bid documents in the oil and gas sector that may be designed in such a way that they're inhibitive for private sector to participate. If you have, and I give an example, if you have a bid document that say you have to have a monthly turnover of $4 million US, there are hardly any private sector companies in Guyana who will meet that requirement. So we have to work with the oil and gas company to ensure that the bidding documents and the bidding system and the contract management system itself does not form a hindrance to local private sector participation. So even contract management, you have the payment schedule, people being paid every 3 months or 4 months, and you have to have a capital outlay of $4 million US. The private sector here may not have the capacity to put out that amount of cash and wait until 4 months. So these are the new things we have to look in the mix of ensuring that the local private sector has an equal opportunity in the space of oil and gas, but also all the other things I've spoken about.
Thank you very much. Brigadier, there's a big issue. I think you and I would have spoken about it the last time, but it's evolving, it's still evolving. The issue of migration. We have along these bank there, along the riverbanks. I think you live in Diamond, and if you look at the riverbanks, it's growing every day. I think we have scores of homes between Grove to probably Herstell in there, and I'm hearing it's literally in the hundreds. And according to the latest figures presented by the government, we have about 40,000 plus Venezuelans here. Plus, we've seen others ever so often. You open a newspaper, you go to the Regent Street stores, you go to supermarkets. We're faced with a very real issue of migration here. Whether it's legal or illegal, we don't know to the extent. How do you intend to use your office, maybe your expertise, to create a policy that is going to ensure that one, Guyana is protected, and two, that maybe we don't close the doors because of the CARICOM treaties and everything?
Well, I think the issue that you're talking about is the movement of Venezuelans, and they're basically refugees leaving a bad economic environment, economic situation in Venezuela. So it is a humanitarian effort, it's a humanitarian issue. And we have to look at this in a holistic manner, again in Guyana, from an interagency approach. It's not just the security aspect, but there's a health aspect, there's a need for housing, there's a need for integration into our educational system, because we don't know, and we don't know how long they will be in Guyana, but based on trends, refugees do not just come and return in a matter of months. We have people living in other countries around the world in refugee camps for over 5 years. We have, children who went through primary school, secondary school, and even university education who are still living in refugee camps. So I think what will happen in Guyana is that we have to take the bull by the horn, and we have to have a national plan to deal with the refugees and see them as new settlers to Guyana. New settlers who will have to be housed, who will have to be educated, who will have to have medical attention, and you will have to feed them, etc. So the time, unfortunately, this discussion we should have had this discussion over a year or maybe 2 years ago, but it's never too late. I see us having a concerted approach, utilizing all the agencies of government that I mentioned before to deal with this issue. This issue is here to stay with us for a while.
Well, just to add to Brigadier, when we look at border security and the issue of immigration and migration, it is very important that we look beyond the context and confines of our own borders. We have to have a thorough understanding as to what is happening in the region itself. What is happening, for example, in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Brazil, and to understand the context as to what is happening. And then look at our threats. What are the real threats to our borders? Because at the end of the day, we have to ensure that our borders remain secure, that there is no penetration of our borders. So you have two aspects. You have the softer aspect, which is the humanitarian aspect that Brigadier spoke of, but then you also have the core issues, that is border policing. And we have said in our manifesto that we have to integrate the communities that are close to the border more in terms of the protection of our border. That's the development of a border policing agency. We have to use technology to our advantage in having technology give us real-time updates and real-time images as to what is happening along our borders. You know that we have extensive borders here in Guyana, and we cannot also avoid the fact that we have a threat to our border from Venezuela. And this requires us to build greater collaboration, international collaboration with partners and stakeholders. And I've said it on more than one occasion that we have to ensure that our friends and our partners are with us. We have a common understanding of what those threats are and how we'll approach the protection of the border. And the government definitely would have to work very closely with reliable partners or reliable partners. You know, The U.S. has been one partner. We have the U.S., we have Canada, we have UK, and we have to ensure that we build an international consortium, if you want to put it that way, in helping us to protect our border. Because we share border with very large countries, and we also have to work on the diplomatic, ensuring that we have good diplomatic relationship. We build our diplomatic capacity with all our neighbors and strengthen our ability to deal with these issues. Then you have what we term the growth in population along specific corridor of our population. And the East Coast, the East Bank, sorry, as you mentioned, is one such corridor. And how do we deal with this growth in population? It's not only population that is generic to Guyanese, but new population, immigrants coming in. We have the university, the international university there, and the investment portfolio that we want to lay out. We'll see many more international workers, students coming into that area. So that is why we said we have to work on the infrastructure transformational plan that will see a new superhighway. We have to look at expanding our schools, expanding our capability and capacity to deal with health issues. That is why we said in every single region we want to invest in a state-of-the-art medical facility so that we can have more of the population treated at the regional level, and this would ease the burden on the Georgetown Hospital, for example.
Dr. Ali, the issue of corruption has been dogging us for years. Consecutive administrations, including the PPP, has been accused of not doing enough or allowing various levels in the government, from the central government down to the regional side of things. Although we would have the Public Procurement Commission in place, you still hearing splitting of contracts at the regional level. As president, let's assume that your party wins the general elections that is coming on Monday. What are some of your plans to tackle this issue that's been dogging us?
Well, you know, of course we have to differentiate between perception and real corruption. When the PP was in government, there was a lot of propaganda and perception. This government went through a number of audits, invested a lot of money in audits, independent audits, and we've seen the result. As against what is coming out of the Auditor General report now, an independent Auditor General report that shows the level of corruption, mismanagement of funds, money going missing. There is no support documentation for billions, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on various projects. But as you rightfully said, you can have the best institutions to deal with the issue of corruption. But if those institutions are controlled by the political hand and they're not allowed, they're not given the opportunity to work, then you have problems. Take, for example, the Public Procurement Commission. They issued a report on the contract of the purchase of drugs. What came out of that report? The report pointed clearly to breach in process, breach in procedure, political involvement, and it was clear that there was a complete breakdown of the system, and it has all the features of corruption and involvement of stakeholders. But what happens? It is just collected by the executive with no action. So the enforcement arm, and you would have been there at a number of PAC meetings, and you will see the difficulties you have. You read the Auditor General report, there is clear indication of misuse of funds, there is clear indication of unaccountability of funds, but then when you get to the point that you now have the evidence, the PAC hands are tied in terms of what they can do, what sanctions can be made. It goes right back to the executive. And we have seen this executive very blatantly disregarding all these reports, disregarding the rule of law. We have seen even their own commission that were commissioned by themselves for sugar, saying don't close the sugar industry, they disregarded those. So it is one thing to have the institutions. The other important aspect is to ensure the institution work, to ensure the institution has the what I would say, the wings to exercise its power, to ensure the institutions have adequate resources to exercise its powers. So the Public Procurement Commission the National Tender, the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board, the Public Accounts Committee. These are all things that the PPP brought to help that are now controlled by the executive arm. I mean, look at the PSC. You have ministers sitting on the Public Accounts Committee now. Nowhere in the world you have this. A member of the executive members of the executives are sitting on the Public Accounts Committee. How can you scrutinize yourself? You have a junior staff coming before you. You're sitting there as a minister. What do you think will happen? So the independence of the Public Accounts Committee and scrutinizing the public expenditure becomes compromised with this. And these are the things we have to fix. And in the reform process that you talk about, maybe we have to clearly define who can now sit on the PSC to avoid a situation like we had over the last 5 years, where the executive itself was having oversight for itself. So the parliamentary process also needs to work.
I thank you for that. Brigadier, recently there was a big controversy surrounding the decision by GCOM to reduce the number of privately the polling stations. And I saw yesterday that it says, you know, it suggested that one of the reasons for the decision is that because at the private dwellings which house a polling station, there was a suggestion of fraud because you look at the high amount of votes that came out, which is unusual. It always came out pretty high there. Have you as a party been paying attention to the reasons given, and how do we move forward from here? I know they would have put back some of the polling places, the number of polling places.
I know the party is addressing that through the agent, Mr. Zulfikar, and of course the General Secretary. But if I should offer my personal opinion, I have been following elections from the time I was about 18 years old, you know, allowed to vote, and we have had private polling places, and I've never seen any documented report claiming that there was fraud or any fraudulent activity at any private polling places. My understanding is that GCOM is reacting to an aspect of the Carter report, and even in that report, they did not indicate that there was any fraudulent activity at any private polling place. They were just offering a suggestion that in order to have greater, what's the term they use, neutrality, we should seek to use more public polling place and reduce private polling place.
Well, the issue here, Leonard, is it's one that we fought at GCOM, and what we would have seen is that the reduction was only in our stronghold. In where the government stronghold was, there was no reduction in private residence. So for us, it was more than an issue of the removal of private residences. If you look at it on the surface, it looks as if it was discriminatory against the opposition, because in our area we had those challenges. Then you have the fear factor, the risk factor of persons going into known areas that you had difficulties on election day, our supporters going into those areas to vote, and it can become confrontational. You can have conflict, and you want to avoid that on election day. And then you had one polling place where 7,000 people had to go and vote. That would have been a logistics nightmare. Fortunately, we were able to present our case and convince GCOM. Well, we were too close to the elections to go through all the requests that we had, so we focused on the priority areas, and we presented our case, and GCOM would have committed to adding the polling stations in those areas.
I want to ask you, Dr. Ali, the the coalition government and other parties would have been saying and we raised this issue. You were a Jack Deere's puppet, that you would have answered it the last time that you were here. Going forward, I want to ask you two questions, and you could answer it accordingly. Do you believe that you will make a good president and out of the shadow of Brigadier?
Well, first of all, let me answer you by saying that there is no shadow and so on here. We are presenting a team. Brigadier is part of that team. I am very happy that he's part of that team. Guyana should be very happy. He has a wealth of experience. He has international standing. He has capability, capacities, and competencies that Guyana can well use and will be utilized to the fullest. And I'm very, as I said, I'm very confident about myself. I know my own capability. I've worked in senior management portfolios. I've worked in ministerial portfolio. I've sat in Parliament. I've chaired the PSC. I've co-chaired the Economic Services Committee, and you can be your own judge. Look at the work of the PSC in the last 5 years. Look at the work in the Economic Services Committee. Look at the implementation rate of the Caribbean Development Bank Project Implementation Unit in Guyana. At the Ministry of Finance, we had the highest implementation rate, and be your own judge. Look at the successes of the housing sector. So that is not an issue. It is just part of this branding, this propaganda and branding that doesn't affect me at all, because, you know, it affects you when you have insecurity problems. I don't have insecurity problems.
Brigadier, you on the ground, what's the feeling of the support for the People's Progressive Party, see?
You know, Len, let me start by telling you that we have been crisscrossing this country. We went to all corners of Guyana. And in everywhere we went, there's tremendous support for the PPPC. And I have no reason to believe, to even ponder, that we will lose this election. We will be victorious once the election is free and fair and free from fear. And I'm happy to know that we have observers from many international agencies and many local organizations who will be observing these elections. And that will help in, you know, the fairness of this election and the freedom from fear associated with elections sometimes in Guyana. And once the conditions are set, the PPPC will win this election and will return this country to democracy.
In closing, Doc.
I just want to add, if I may, Leonard, that the Brigadier Phillips has really outlined to you that our campaign is strong. It is a national campaign, a united campaign, and we are very certain that with the support and the love that is shown, that we are very humbled by, that we will come out victorious. You know too that elections management involves good security plan, and the leader of the opposition would have raised two very important questions. That is whether indeed 60% of the fleet of the police force is down right now, and to what extent the rural constable use or utilizing our policemen and women at the polling station that will deplete our ability to respond and so on. So these are questions too that, you know, I think the Commissioner of Police should address. The Commissioner of Police, in my view, has a responsibility to outline to the nation the strategy in terms of election, the plan to give the confidence, give the nation the confidence, give the private sector the confidence, the international community the confidence that there is a fair, well laid out plan to ensure that you know, everything remains peaceful.
Brigadier, in closing, first time in the political arena, what are you saying as a last pitch to the people before you go down to the final lap?
Well, what I'd like to say to the people is that I am the newest politician, yes, but I am a Democrat. I believe in democracy. I don't believe in any dictatorship. You have a situation in Guyana where you have a government that is unconstitutional, and they made themselves unconstitutional by disobeying the laws of Guyana. The supreme law of Guyana is the Constitution of Guyana. You cannot have a government that disobeys the Constitution. This is the government that took the case right through to the CCJ and continue to disobey the ruling of the CCJ. We are happy that we have elections now. This is an opportunity to return to lawful governance in Guyana, to peace, to stability and security through the democratic process. And that is what is important for Guyana now. That is of greater importance than oil and gas now for Guyana. Democracy first, and that will ensure even development for all the people of Guyana. And a win for the PPC through a democratic process is putting the people first in Guyana.
I thank you for that. And Dr. Ali, very confident man to be the next president of Guyana. Your parting words to the people of Guyana.
Thank you very much. Well, you know, I would like to say to my fellow Guyanese brothers and sisters, you have looked at two campaigns, one that is filled with negativity, and one that has outlined a clear vision and a strategy, one that believes in democracy, as Brigadier would have said, one that believes in freedom, one that believes in the Constitution, one that is looking towards the creation of jobs, 30,000 new jobs, 50,000 house lots, the return of the Because We Care grant, the increasing of the pension, doubling of the old age pension, one that look at transformational infrastructure that would open up new opportunities, one that will look at better management and accountability of the oil and gas resources, one that will have greater involvement of civil society, a greater political partnership, national unity, one that would address issues of vulnerable community, one that will seek to address the concerns of, and not only seek to address the concern, but to implement an agenda that will see young people, women, the elderly, children, all Guyanese benefiting from improved livelihood and better condition of living, and our country moving forward in a just manner, a manner in which all of us will be proud. And at the end of the day, all Guyanese must be winners and will be winners under PP civic government. And I want to thank all those who would have supported us for their love, their admiration, and their encouragement. Thank you very much. And, you know, we are on towards not only victory, but building a Guyana for all of us.
I do thank you for that. And 4 days to go before general and regional elections, very important elections. And we urging everybody to head to the polls on Monday for wherever you live in. This is your host, Leonard Gildarie, of a special edition of the Political Show. And on behalf of Kaieteur Radio and Kaieteur News, we want to wish you, Dr. Ali and Brigadier Phillips, all the best in the coming elections.
Thank you very much.
And may God continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.